Hello everyone, and welcome to another Star Trek Online video. Today I'm gonna go over the skill tree. There is a space skill tree, a ground skill tree, and then there are specializations, but more on those later. So in space you got 46 points. So you got different points for your space skill tree and for your ground skill tree, and well, specialization also has its own points. So when we look at space here, something important to note is there are nodes down here that unlock once you spend a certain number of points into either tactical science or engineering. And at the very end, you can unlock an active skill. So if you put 24 points into tactical, you can get focused frenzy. And then if you spend even more, you can essentially improve that skill. Now, those skills are not needed by any means, so if you don't have them, don't worry about it. But it's something that you can consider if you want to. But there is nothing wrong with just spreading a little bit more evenly throughout the tree. What I can tell you is that if you are intending on using mostly weapons to do your damage, which most people will, then the tactical tree is very important. There are more science-oriented builds, and science can do damage too. But those are a little bit more complicated and tend to need, better and more expensive gear, put it like this. Okay, so let's get started on our first tier, and you can see you need to spend a certain number of points in the first tier to unlock the second, and so on, going down here. So in tactical, we have energy weapons training and projectile weapons training. Here is also something I need to point out. The first point is always the most influential. So as you can see here in the tooltip, spending 1 point gives us 50 energy weapon training, and that will increase our damage by 25%. The second point gives us 35 energy weapon training, so less than 50. So that gives us a total of 85 and a total damage bonus of 42.5%. And the last point gives us only 15 energy weapon training, and now the total damage increase is 50%. So it's essentially only a 7.5% increase from the second stage to the third. But it's a 25, like from 0 to the first skill, it's 25%, and then the last step is only 7.5%. So as you can see, getting the third skill is not always the most efficient way of using your points, but on the other hand, if it's a skill that's like really good, it might still be worth it. So another thing to point out is that when you look at energy weapon training here, 50% like total damage increase sounds impressive, but there are a lot of very high damage increases in this game that all stack. But it's not like it's not stacking multiplicatively, so you aren't actually doing 50% more damage with this if you stack a lot of other... So essentially there are diminishing returns is what I'm trying to say. So I would definitely get some energy weapons training, and I would personally also get some projectile weapon training, because you're probably going to use both of them. I probably wouldn't bother with the third point personally. A lot of people will, because it's more damage, and even if it's just a small increase, people want it. But because you can stack so much damage bonuses, I don't think the last point really is worth it here. So let's look at science and engineering. So in science you have shield restoration, which helps shield healing abilities, and hull restoration, the same for hull healing abilities. And then you can get more hull capacity, and you can get more shield capacity. So once again, you see the first point gives you 15% maximum hull, and then if you go here from the second to the third point, it's like 4.5%. So I think personally only go 2 points in, but that's up to you, right? If you want those 4.5%, go for it. I also tend to scale shield capacity. I think most people won't, because shields are looked down upon in the very high-end content. Because if you have thousands of dollars worth of money spent in this game and you have everything, and you're doing high-end elite tanking, you're not going to bother about shield and only use hull, but the vast majority of people probably need the shield to stay alive. So I personally, but you know, it's up to you, right? You do you. I also scale 1 point into the heals because I tend to bring heals. Once again, high-end builds often skip heals because they heal with consoles and other stuff. But, you know, that's me. So let's look at the next tier. You have defensive maneuvering, which gives defense, and targeting expertise, which gives accuracy. Now, defense means a chance to like avoid hits and don't take any damage, and target means, well, like accuracy helps you hit the enemy so they don't evade. Now you probably want some accuracy. Also, any accuracy that you have left over, like if you have too much accuracy, and you are basically guaranteed at hitting the enemy, then the accuracy that you don't need is converted to crit. It's not the most favorable rating, but still, accuracy never hurts. So I would put at least 2 points into accuracy, I think, and probably 1 point into defense. The thing about defense is defense depends a lot on how fast you move. So if your ship is standing still, you basically don't have any defense, and you know, there is then. Now, aside from accuracy and defense, here you have in science control expertise and drain expertise. I would definitely skill control expertise. There are a lot of interesting control abilities, mostly gravity well, which is a fun ability and a lot of ships can slot it. Now, when it comes to a skill tree in general, right, you might switch ships and you don't want to respec every time you switch ships. So my suggestion would be to have sort of a spec that works with kinda everything. It might not be perfect for any single purpose, but it's something where you just gonna do fine in every ship. So I'd probably take at least 1 point in drain expertise. Drains are, don't think, the most useful thing necessarily, but it also gives you drain resistance, so there is that. Now the further nodes are improved drain expertise, which gives you even more drain skill, and then drain infection. The problem with drain infection is it only works on a few skills, and it doesn't seem to... you need a very specialized build to make use of this, I think, so I probably wouldn't pick it. I might pick improved control expertise because it gives you even more control skills and makes like your gravity well pull harder, for example. Control amplification is, I suppose, like for an exotic build, it would be interesting, but unless you know you're going to go for an exotic build, maybe not something you need. But if you have the point to spare, why not? Now, impulse expertise gives you better speed and turn rate. I would probably put 1 point into it. And electroplasma flow improves your power transfer rate. Now, your ship has power levels like weapon, engineering, auxiliary, shields, and you can, during combat, change your power levels. And as you, well, if you change power levels, you will see that they don't instantly have the new values, right? The power gets slowly transferred. Also, if you go to full impulse, all of your power will be put into engines, and then when you drop out of full impulse, it will slowly like revert to your actual power settings. And whenever power flows around, well, electroplasma flow makes it flow faster. So I would definitely put 1 point in here. I might even put 2 points in here, like get the improved DPS flow. I wouldn't necessarily go for the full impulse shunt, but yeah, I probably would just get the improved DPS flow here. Also something that you can skip. I would at least put 1 point into it, right? The second here for the improved DPS flow. That's up to you. Now we come to the next level of skills, and here we have the critical skills. So there is crit chance and crit severity. And I would personally... here I would get the maximum, and the reason is because crit just stacks like the last point isn't that much, as you can see, right? So you might be thinking, well, is it really worth it? But in this game you can stack a lot of crit chance and crit severity, and that's just, I think, really useful. So I would go full all out on crit. There are consoles from the reputation that you can get that buff your crits. There are... And those are easy to get, right? You can get the Borg console, you can get the Locus console, you can get the 0 Point console. Those are just free consoles that buff your crit. And if you can get yourself some duty officers that buff crit, eventually you could go full like Watchers or Superior Romulan Operatives or something. And you will see that crit just tends to be worth it, is the point that I'm making. Because it just like stacks really well. Now, here you have shield hardness. Shield hardness is essentially damage resistance for your shield. And as I said earlier, a lot of people just don't believe in shields. I do believe in them, so I would put at least 1 point in here, maybe 2. Now, what I wouldn't put that much points into is shield restoration and damage control. Those are mostly like a regeneration bonus, but the regeneration bonus in combat is very small. It mostly helps outside of combat, and you don't really need to regenerate outside of combat that much, so I would skip those personally. I feel like those are just not worth it because the bonuses are so limited inside combat. I would definitely get hull plating. This gives your hull resistance, and the other options are here more hull resistance against physical and kinetic or against energy. Like the first skill gives you hull resistance against everything, and then you can get additional hull resistance either against energy or kinetic. I wouldn't necessarily go for those because I feel like you can spend the points somewhere else, but you could if you want more resistance. Also, I might even consider going the second here in shield hardness because it's now 17% shield resistance, and I also like to run emergency power to shields, which further gives shield resistance. Stacking shield resistance is certainly a way to make your shields last longer. So I might even be going like here 1 step further, but that's just me. Now, I wouldn't go the last step. As you can see, the last step is like a 3% increase, right? The first point gives you 10%, the second gives you 7%, and then the third gives you 3%. Like, those 3% are just gonna be worth it. Now we come to the next tier. Here we have hull penetration and shield penetration. You know, I'm not the biggest fan of shield penetration. I would probably still put 1 point in there for additional shield breakthrough. The thing is, you are very rarely going to blow up the hull of an enemy that still has shields. So having like a little bit of damage on the hull already while he still has shields, I don't feel like it's worth it. And then once the shield is gone, what do you do with shield penetration? Hull penetration, on the other hand, I think is very useful because you're always gonna like destroy the hull in order to blow them up. So I might even go all the way in hull penetration. Hull penetration is something that you don't usually have that much of, so that helps. Maybe 1 point in shield pen, but as I've said, you know, it's like penetrating the shield, I feel like is not that useful because you're gonna shoot the shield down anyway and then shoot the hull. Long-range sensor targeting, now that's a very useful thing because there is a distance penalty for your weapons, and essentially if you're farther away from the target, your weapons do less damage, and with this, you know, that distance penalty gets reduced, so I would go all the way in here. Just so you can do more damage from range, right? Because, you know, if you are fighting a group of enemies, or if you are using like an AoE skill, even if you position yourself for like 1 enemy, others will be further away. And, you know, it's just very useful, I think, and makes your positioning easier. Then we have offensive subsystem tuning and defensive subsystem tuning. It gives you shield and aux power, and the other gives you weapons and engine power. And personally, I think they are worth it. Like, they are just 1 point. And just like that, you've now increased all of your power systems. I wouldn't go any further than that, because if you go further, it's only 1 subsystem where you get the bonus, and it's a smaller bonus. So the first skills are really worth a lot, and then I think the follow-ups not so much. Now, exotic particle generator, now that's something I would spec into. even if you're not planning a science build in that sense, there might be some abilities you use that do exotic damage. There might even be like a torpedo that you use that just has a secondary effect that does exotic damage and something like that. I would put at least 2 points into it. Once again, the last point is like a 15 in particle generator, so it depends a little bit on the build that you're planning, but you could go all the way definitely. Like there's nothing wrong with going all the way here. Which brings us to the last skill tree, right? Now there is warp core potential, which gives free to all subsystem power. I would personally just go for that because it's, I think for 1 point, that's just worth it, right? There is coordination protocols. I would always skill that. Now this buffs your hunger pads, but it just doesn't buff your hunger pads. It also buffs your teammates. So it's just, I feel like a nice thing to have, because if you do any like content with other people, they get a buff, and you know, it doesn't cost you much. I mean, a few skill points I suppose, but it's like you don't really need to slot a special ability. It's just like a passive, and you're probably gonna have some pets at some point, because it's not just for hunger pets, it's also for summoned allies, although summoned allies get a smaller bonus. But you have some devices probably that summon allies, and a lot of ships have hunger base these days, so I would definitely spec that out. Now there is shield mastery, negate an incoming critical hit once per 20 seconds. I don't think that's worth it, but I mean, if you want to, go ahead. And then we have tactical readiness, scientific readiness, and engineering readiness. Now what those do is they give you ability recharge bonus, but here is the thing, it really depends on how you manage your cooldowns already. Because if you are having something like Boimler and Photonic Officer and maybe some other things that reduce cooldowns, you can't reduce them below, like they all have a minimum cooldown they can have, right? So the amount of use you get out of these could be limited. Of course, they can help if you don't have anything to reduce cooldowns already. If you go up there to 3 points, it's a 20% cooldown reduction. Once again, the third point is absolutely not worth it. It's 3%, right? If you go to the third, it's like a 3 additional percent. You either go 1 or 2 points into those, unless you really need to spec something because you wanted to go all tactically or something. So I still have 3 points left, right? So where would I put them? Now, this is just a suggestion here, right? You don't have to follow my advice here in any way or form, but this is how I like to spec my characters, and it works relatively well. So I could just put now 1 in all of those readiness skills, for example, because it helps if one of your cooldown reductions doesn't trigger. I would probably get like the 3rd point in exotic particle generator, simply because, you know, I'm not sure what I'll put on this ship in the future and might be useful. And maybe I would put, I don't know, you could do at least 1 in tactical, I guess, and 1 in scientific. I'm not really sure if this is like this, like I usually I'd hope that one of my other cooldown reductions triggers. I'm not going for engineering because I'm using the damage control DOFs. Other damage control DOFs. I'm using the duty officers that help me with my emergency powers, and mostly what I run in engineering is emergency power to weapons and shields, and maybe an engineering team, and the engineering team doesn't really need the faster cooldown. So engineering I don't find that helpful. I tend to run quite a few science and tactical skills, so those might help. Now, as you can see, I've not reached the maximum in any of those, but I'm fine with that. I've never cared too much about those skills at the end here, personally. I have enough skills to worry about already. So now let's look at those nodes, right? Because as I've said, you now unlocked nodes, and the first engineering node we have is Hunger Health or Battery Expertise. Now, Battery Expertise is generally the recommended skill. I'm not sure what all devices are affected, but it increases batteries. Batteries are easy to come by and they can be useful. I'm personally usually fail at using batteries because they're consumables, and even though they are easy to restock, I'm just too lazy to use them. Hunger health is definitely an option, but 10% maximum hull on your pets, it's not the world, so take what you like, but I think battery expertise is generally the recommended skill, and if you actually use batteries, it's nice to have. Now, next here we have sector travel or transwarp cooldown. I feel like transwarp cooldown is already pretty decent, and the thing with transwarp is you can usually just accept a PvE mission somewhere in the area where you want to go and then transwarp to the mission, so so you can sort of bypass the transwarp stuff a little bit. I would just go with sector-based travel, I think. And here you have threat control or hunger weaponry. I personally go for hunger weaponry. Now this is up to you how much you care about threat generation. This obviously helps you not get shot as much if you don't want to be, or it helps you tank if you want to be a tank. But I usually have hunger pads somewhere on my ship, and I can do with a little bit more damage. Now we have maximum hull capacity or subsystem repair. I would definitely go for the hull capacity here. We have shield capacity or stealth. I would also go for shield here. Stealth isn't really all that you... Maybe in PvP, but not really anyone does PvP these days, so... I would just go for shield here. And then we have critical chance or critical damage. Personally, I go for critical chance. Now, if you have so much critical chance already that the severity appeals to you, go for it. But I usually don't, so chance it is. Once again, here this is for energy weapons. I would go with critical chance. Then here I'd go with perception or control resistance. Probably control resistance, because it's not like perception is all that useful against NPCs, and then probably accuracy rating here in the end. And that's not a perfect build for anything really, but it's a good all-rounder build. You can put that on any ship and you can do perfectly fine with it. So yeah, this is something similar like this is what I run on most of my characters, and that works perfectly fine. But if you want to do something different, go for it. You can retrain your skills, but skill retrains are not necessarily free. You can get a free skill retrain token if you reach tier 6 reputation. You can claim that, I think, once per reputation, so that's a lot of free skill retrain tokens, but first you need to get to tier 6 reputation, which can take a while. You also get free retains usually if there is a major patch that makes changes to like the skill system or something like that, or rebalances stuff. There might be some events where you can get them, and if you are like if you have veteran rewards or so, I think you get some free retains as you level up. So there is that. A retrain token I think costs about 300 cents or about $3 or so. Not the world, but you probably don't want to retrain every day. So there is that. Okay, so next we have the ground skill tree, and as you can see, that's a lot simpler. So in the ground skill tree we have weapon proficiency, so this is about your weapons, this is about your shields, this is about your health and armor, and this is about your kit performance. Now, you definitely want kit performance, so there is that. You probably also want even more kit performance, so that's definitely things that you want to get. Now this is kit efficiency, which gives you ability recharge bonus. Ability recharge, I mean, how you manage your cooldowns once again is another thing, and honestly there is like the MUDS device that helps you with recharge. So there are some skills with like from the Discovery Reputation. It's a universal kit module. It's I don't think this character actually has that unlocked yet, but it would be here in the Discovery Reputation. It might be like a tier 4 to 5 thing. It's MUDS time device or something like that. Let's see. Yeah, MUDS time device. You get it with the tier 4 reputation, right? And it essentially helps you manage cooldowns. So Do you need more cooldown reduction? I mean, you can at least take the first thing here. I wouldn't bother with the second one, the additional 8%. You definitely want weapon proficiency, and then you get even more weapon proficiency. You get crits, and you get weapon penetration. Now you can skill all of those if you want to. As you can see, I only have 4 points left, so I could do those 3, and then a lot of people will just skill like this tree completely and this tree completely. Personally, I'm not sure if that, as I said, I don't think this is necessarily worth it. This might be worth it, the weapons tree, but I personally like to put like at least a little bit in shield, and maybe some health, and maybe some armor. But you know, that's just me. If you just wanna go full offensive, go full offensive. And then I have 1 point left, and could just go for more crit, or you could just go for a damage increase here, right? So there you go. You could absolutely just give up on the defensive stuff and just go full offensive if you want to, but it's up to you. Now we come down to the nodes here, and those are just like the first node is a skill that you can train. This depends on your career. So because this is a tactical officer, I get the option between smoke grenade and photon grenade. Like those are not the most important. You can get all of those skills essentially from the exchange, so you can buy them from other players. So if you didn't take the skill here that you want to train a bridge officer, you can get the manuals elsewhere, and it's not like you necessarily care that much maybe if your ground bridge officer has a photon grenade free or not. Now here you have willpower or device. Personally, I think I'd go for device. You have sweeping strikes or lunge. I don't care about either of those skills, honestly. I mean, that's up to you. You have improved aim or improved crouch, so you can aim your weapons or you can crouch. I usually use, I'd go for improved aim, but I usually use neither the aim nor the crouch, so for me personally this doesn't make much of a difference. Now we have another thing. I go here for target optics. Then we have Furious Footwork, Fatal Fists, right? Attacking with melee grants you run speed, or attacking with melee inflicts a debuff. I personally go for the debuff, but the question is, are you using melee at all anyway? And it's like a personal preference, right? I mean, if you want to do some of those differently, go ahead. Yeah, let's just go for a fire on my mark here. And then what else do we have? Improved flank damage or flank resistance. I'd probably go for improved flank damage, because you can just try to not get flanked. So there is that. That's like being flanked is not an ideal state. While you want to flank the enemy, but you don't want to be flanked yourself, right? So if you're doing things right, improved flank damage is going to be more useful, it feels like. Let's go for Overwatch here, and then in the last skill you can get Defensive Mastery or Offensive Mastery. I'd probably just go for Offensive Mastery here. So that's the ground skill tree. And now let's briefly talk about specializations. As you can see, there are a few different ones. And when you look at the tree here, you can see you can now spec into those with specialization points. Once you reach maximum level, every time you level up further, you gain 1 specialization point endlessly, essentially. So you can spec out all the specialization trees over time. That's also why there isn't really a respec for this, because you just can skill everything eventually, right? You just need to keep playing, you gain more specialization points, and then you spec in them. But you just have to choose which are active, and you can change that at any time. So this is currently my active primary. The primary gives you all the skills in the tree, and the secondary only gives you like the first 2 tiers of skills. But there is also a passive associated with this. So as you can see here, the passive here is I gain dodge bonus on ground, and I gain a defense rating in space. And the more points you spend, the higher this passive will go. And then you can like look over the different abilities and what they do. There isn't any choice to make here. It's essentially just put your points in and eventually you'll have everything. And you can switch them around. Here I have a temporal as secondary. And you can go over those trees and see what appeals to you and switch them around and try out different things. It will take a while to fill out a specialization tree. But, you know, if you keep playing this game, you will get all of those abilities eventually. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this and maybe learned something new. Oh, maybe a slight thing that I should mention. There are, like, Commando, for example, is a specialization that's only secondary, like is like Constable and Strategist. So those three are secondary only specializations, and the other specializations are like full ones where you can go up to tier 4 and get them as primary or as secondary. And pilot is, well, it's a pilot, so it's essentially like all about space, while something like intelligence has space and ground things in it. So there is that, right? So yeah, that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.